Hey, what's up guys? Gons here for the Face Like the Sun YouTube channel. This video today is a little bit different. I have been asked to be one of the hosts for a show called The Revolving Door radio program on the Intrepid Paradigm Radio Network. It's an alternative talk radio station that hosts a bunch of different stuff, and I've been asked to be one of the hosts that it's called Revolving Door because every 4 weeks different hosts rotates through. And so I said okay, and so this was actually the first episode, and it was supposed to air last week on Friday, but it did not because some technical difficulties and some programmers unable to access certain things, and there was some stuff that came up. So that's why it didn't air on Friday, but I believe it's airing tonight. But if you're here, you don't have to tune into at least the Intrepid Paradigm Radio online. You can just listen to it here because I have the right to publish this right here on my YouTube channel here. So I decided to do that. I just talk about truth, and keep in mind, I recorded this last Thursday. So some of the things that I mention were timely for, the day of last week, but may not be because we're a week ahead from where I recorded that stuff. So that's it. Without further ado, here is the first episode that I've hosted for the Revolving Door radio program. Check it out.
You're listening to the Revolving Door radio program on the Intrepid Paradigm Broadcasting Network.
Welcome to the Revolving Door radio program on the IPBN FM Alternative Talk Radio. My name is Gons, and I'm one of the hosts of the Revolving Door. You've probably heard Bruce Collins. You probably heard Chad Miles, Johnny McMahon, or The Iron Show, Natalina, and I'm that last wheel. You know, they thought, hey, we got to get one more person in on this revolving door thing. And they're like, hey, what about this weird guy, Gons? So they asked me, and I said, sure, why not? So here I am. Now, if you want to check out some of the stuff that I'm involved in, you can go to canarycryradio.com. It's a podcast that myself and my co-host, Basil, have been running for over 3 years now. We've interviewed all kinds of people on various topics. We've discussed things from John Titor and the time traveling thing that he's, allegedly involved in, to Obama going to Mars, to, anything conceivable we've tried to touch on. Obviously, we haven't been able to tackle everything in the world of conspiracy, but that's a podcast that you can check out. And, we try to interview experts on various issues. And so, again, you can go to canarycryradio.com to check those out, or you can find us on iTunes. Just type in Canary Cry Radio and you'll find it. And the motto of that podcast is think outside the cage. And hopefully those of you listening understand what I'm talking about, or what we talk about on the show when I say the cage. What is the cage? Well, the cage can be anything from the corporatocracy that rules over this world, this planet, and the nefarious spiritual entities that reside behind this corporatocracy, to your very mind. Your mind can be trapped inside a cage that was built by the corporatocracy, feeding you the information that they want you to consume, both in terms of just ideas, but also in food, water, your music, your entertainment, everything you can consume, they have made available for you, easily accessible through magazines, television, now with technology and the internet and the iPhone, and just a click of a button or a tap of the finger, you can get all kinds of stuff that feeds into your worldview. And that's the cage, right? And a lot of us have been trying to break out of this cage. And really, it's the internet era, this last maybe 15 years or so, especially since 9/11, where the online community has built this thing called the truther movement, right? And we've created this hub of information that is apart from the mainstream media or what the corporate sponsors want to feed you. And oftentimes, what the independent researchers, the independent reporters, journalists, what they come up with is diametrically opposed to what the mainstream media is trying to feed you. So in that spirit, I want to talk to you about truth tonight. And truth being something that is enigmatic, but at the same time, compelling, and not always pleasant, by the way. Aside from Canary Cry Radio, the podcast, I actually run a YouTube channel. And if you go to YouTube and just type in Face Like the Sun, all one word, FACELIKETHESUN, you'll find my channel. And I have over 300 videos published on that channel. I've made a couple documentaries. And if you've heard of Age of Deceit, Fallen Angels, and the New World Order, that's something I published back in 2011. And then in 2014, I published Age of Deceit 2, Alchemy and the Rise of the Beast Image. And those are completely free to watch. And, that's over 5.5 hours of information for you, for anyone who's, new to this kind of stuff. And the reason why I made the film was because as I was waking up, right, I was discovering that there is a lot of different takes on what's really going on. And I had to investigate for myself what I thought was really what's going on. Now, here's the deal with truth, okay? A lot of times, what is considered true depends on your worldview, depends on your trajectory and your perspective, your presuppositions. Now, I'm not talking about facts. There's a difference between facts and truth, the way we use it in this sort of truther community. Facts are just data points. Facts are things, maybe events that occurred, statistical information that you can process in your thinking, but it's really the process of interpreting that information that draws us to certain conclusions about what we call truth. And in the truth community, when the word truth is used, it's oftentimes in reference to motive. For example, just yesterday we had another shooting, one of 25 we've seen this year. I think I heard a statistic that there was a major shooting almost every week or every month or something like that during this year. And, there's a pattern here emerging out of the Obama administration. And the concern that I have while looking into this community of truthers, and look, I've been a part of this for, probably 5 or 6 years now. I've been publishing my own material for about 4 or 5 years. And, just as a background, okay, based on my biases, I'm just going to be upfront with it here and now. I studied sociology in college. And so I read a lot of Nietzsche and, Durkheim and Max Weber and there's a philosophy to studying society. And so that's what I, basically studied in college. Now, I don't have a degree, okay? I'm actually 8 units shy of getting my degree from the University of California, Irvine. And, I have a whole different thing there. I get it, I don't have an official piece of paper that says that I completed the education, but the classes I didn't finish had nothing to do with sociology. It was actually basic math requirements, which, if you're a younger person listening, finish your math in high school so you don't have to really deal with it in college. But in any case, that's a whole other thing that I'll maybe get into some other time. But based on some of the things I learned in analyzing society, I've been able to approach this truther community in a maybe not a unique perspective, but certainly one that analyzes the community and, keeps a tab on the overall temperament of the community. The other part of it that I'm going to be transparent about and upfront is that I'm a Christian. Now, that there's a lot of, negative connotation to the word Christian. We had the Pope show up last week, and he's supposed to be the representative of all of Christendom. But in reality, those of us who, I guess, are labeled Protestant, or at least from that Protestant line, don't consider the Pope to be something that is biblical, the Catholic Church to be something that is biblical. And so, but here we go. Right away, I know some of you listening might be going, oh gosh, look, he's religious, he's got his bias. And it's true, everyone has a bias. But here's the deal. Religion itself is the one thing in human society that claims to have truth. Now, there's a lot of different opinions about that truth. Is there one God? Is there many gods? Was Jesus God? Was Jesus just a good teacher? There's lots of views within the community of religion or spirituality concerning truth, right? And everybody has a good point. Everybody has rhetoric to sort of back up their claim. Even the atheist community, which is very interesting to me because I, really became a Christian by talking to a lot of atheists. And that might seem kind of weird, but I didn't grow up in a Christian home. I didn't grow up in a spiritual home, okay? I didn't grow up with any kind of religion or spirituality. But I know that I was always seeking something. And I wasn't getting whatever that spiritual void was in my soul. I wasn't getting that at home. And I had questions. But at the same time, I was extremely hostile and critical of Christianity, especially because there was a guy on the street corner that held up that sign that said, if you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to hell. But, I always was curious, like, what is it about this guy that drives him to believe that what he's saying is true? And, I couldn't fault his enthusiasm, his passion for this. And at the same time, I noticed that those around me, a lot of atheists, friends, people that were anti-Christian, their rhetoric was, it sounded good. You read a Sam Harris book, and man, he's convincing with his rhetoric. But when you start digging into some of his presuppositions, his philosophical dispositions, they're less compelling. Okay, so truth is not based on where you grew up. Okay, that's one thing that I started to realize because I started to question, hey, why are all my friends so hostile towards Christianity? And that's the one thing you often hear, right? Oh, religion is the one thing that still causes wars and it's killed so many people throughout history. But in reality, when you start looking into it, religion wasn't the cause of all the tragedies and stuff in history. It was actually, more likely, a political ideology, a political agenda. And furthermore, it was religion that was used in one way or another to propel that agenda. And why was religion used? Because it has an element of truth to it. It has something that rings true in the souls of men, where they become sold out to these ideas. Now, a lot of people have said religion is a source of control, and they're partially right. But why is it so compelling? Why is it so powerful to people? Is it just because, there's, again, some good rhetoric, or is there something else? Does it resonate with something in the human mind and soul? I kept using soul here, but really when I talk about the human soul, what I'm really getting at is the human mind, right? It's our minds, our ideas, these non-physical things called thoughts that drive reality in so many ways. And if you think about it, we human beings operate in a very closed system. There's rules and regulations to our physical reality. And while there is such a thing as free will, that free will is limited to an extent. I can say, hey, I have free will. I want to jump 2,000 feet in the air and go take a good look at the moon. Well, I can be as sincere in my free will and my desire to do that. It's just not going to happen. Okay, I'm limited in my own physical reality. Now, I can get an airplane, I can do other things, but those are still manifestations of that desire, number one, but number two, ideas to solve whatever is in the way of completing that desire. Now, let me go back to this idea of religion and truth. One of the criticisms of religion in general, and in Christianity specifically, is that, oh, there's so many denominations, there's so many views. How can you even say that there's any truth when it's so fractured? The church is fractured all over the place. Well, what has happened, and because men are ritualistic, and even if you're not religious, you are ritualistic, guaranteed. Do you get up? Do you brush your teeth every morning? Do you take a shower? Do you get ready, get dressed? These are societal rituals, right? We do things based on our culture and based on our time and place in history. There are certain things that just happen. We are human beings. There's a cycle that is innate within us. We sleep at night, we get up in the morning, we go to work, whatever. There's patterns, there's cycles. And there's purpose behind those patterns, right? We don't just do it just because we do it. We brush our teeth because it's societally kind of weird and unacceptable to have bad breath and bad teeth and all this stuff. We put ridiculous little wires into our mouths to have straight teeth, right? We do all kinds of strange things, and they're all part of societal rituals. In the various denominations, at least in Christendom, and I believe it extends out to all religions, it's sort of the same thing. Humankind has created these rules, these nuances, apart from the central idea, the central truth claim, in order to access that truth, in order to please the deity. And for the non-religious, that deity is either yourself, or it's society as a whole, it's your workplace, it's your culture, it's whatever, but it's something. It's always something. It's always beyond you. And so those rules and those stipulations become doctrine. And there are various forms of doctrine in Christendom, and that's why it's so divided. But the reason why I'm bringing this up and telling you all this is not to convince you of Christianity or of religion. It's actually to give you a societal or sociological analysis of the truth community. Okay, again, I've been part of it. I've looked at it, and because of my YouTube channel, I post a video every single day on various topics, okay? It can be anything from Mars and space to CERN. I've done a whole series on CERN and what's going on in Geneva with the Large Hadron Collider. It could be something, a biblical theme. It could be anything. I try to cover as much stuff as possible that I find interesting. And I do so not so much to say, hey, this is the truth exactly the way I see it, but rather to say, I find this interesting. Here's my opinion and my belief about it. Here are all the links and, resources of where I got the information. Go do your own research. And that's really what I encourage people to do. But in the same way that there are many factions and denominations in Christendom, what I'm starting to see is that within the truther community, there are factions, there are denominations, there are splinter groups. One group claiming to have a particular truth, another group claiming to have another set of truths. And all of them, usually what happens is they point the finger at, a group. One group says it's the Zionists. It's the modern nation state of Israel. They're the evil ones, the fake Jews. Another group will say it's the Catholic Church, it's the Jesuit order, they're behind everything. Another group will say, actually, it's lizard people, right? The reptilians, they're the ones controlling everything. And, the Christians will often say it's demons, it's fallen angels. And to me, that resonates a little bit more. But here's where I stand on this. And because there are certain things in my mind, the way I've processed humanity, just based on the reflections of what I see happening in the world, and based on certain truth claims that biblical Christianity, or at least just the Bible, when you read it, certain claims that they make, when you process those two, I see a reflection of reality around me and the picture that the Bible, the Word of God, right, the scriptures, what it paints about physical reality, what it paints about humanity, fits like a glove to the reality that I observe. Now, again, that doesn't mean that, it's the ultimate truth, okay? I think all of us are in this process of trying to grasp at it. But here's an example of that. most of you guys know the story of Adam and Eve. They were put in the garden, all this stuff. One of the things that was mentioned from God to Adam and Eve when they were first created was, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth, subdue it. And so what we can draw from that is, number one, the Garden of Eden was this place, this perfect paradise, right? We often refer to it as paradise or this perfect garden, a place where God even walked. And if you think about that, that's kind of a strange concept, right? God walking in the cool of the night. Adam can hear his footsteps. And some people will say, well, that's because, Yahweh is an alien. Well, I'll address that some other time. But there's something else interesting about humanity when they were created. It says that we were created in the image of God. Male and female, he created, he, them, And what oftentimes many people, commentators throughout history, people that have looked at that concept, what they do with that is they say, well, the image of God is actually various attributes, our intellect, our reasoning ability, our ability to communicate and have language and all this stuff. Those are the attributes of the image of God. But really, is that what makes us image bearers of God? Or is it simply that humanity itself bears the image of God just for being human? Now, this second thought is compelling because that means the atheist who doesn't believe in God, the agnostic who doesn't know if God exists, the Muslim who believes in Allah, all of us are made in the image of God. And it resonates with this brotherly humanity, this idea that we're one big human family. And so why do we kill each other? Why do we stab each other in the back? Why do we, hate each other? Why do we start wars and do all this stuff, right? Well, the Bible actually has an answer to that as well. It says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, spiritual wickedness, the Greek term cosmocrators. And let me just give you this little tidbit. The Greek word cosmocrator, if you dig in, it's Strong's 2888. If you go into the Greek lexicon, here's how it's defined. Quote, ruler of this world, that is, of the world as asserting its independence of God, used of the angelic or demonic powers controlling the sublunary world. Did you catch that? The sublunary world. The world that is below the moon. Now, we just had this whole, blood moon thing, the eclipse. And actually, I have a video that I published earlier this week based on some friends who saw a large V-shaped cloud in the sky during the blood moon, and also several lights that formed in certain directions and stuff. A UFO sighting, a genuine UFO sighting on the night of the lunar eclipse. And, we can get into that some other time. And these are all topics that, if you don't know what I'm talking about, where I drop some of these, cultural things and references, go Google it. You have information accessibility in front of you. Take advantage of it because it may start to lock down sooner rather than later here. But continuing on here, this idea that our battle is not against flesh and blood. In other words, there is some sort of veil, some sort of covering, some kind of blindness that we as humans have, where we can't see these angelic and demonic powers, but they're somehow controlling us. They're influencing us. And if we start talking about this universe, right? And, some people are really starting to look at the quantum levels and starting to find evidence for a metaverse, a universe that is not this universe, maybe a parallel universe, as some would suggest, but a metaverse where it's another world, where time doesn't necessarily work the way we see it. And actually, what's interesting is that the Bible talks about this world, this spiritual realm. It even talks about entities that reside in that realm. And it would make sense that that is the realm where ideas and thoughts originate. Even for us, even for our being, we often ignore the spirit realm, right? Because we just can't see it. We don't feel it. But how many people believe in the spiritual world? A lot. And I think the physical things that manifest in our physical reality are derivations from the spirit realm. And so when we believe lies that are placed in our minds by demonic forces that say, go kill that guy, or, believe another lie that says, I need something so important. This is so important to me. Having this car is so important to me, or having this job title is so important that I will do whatever it takes. And it's almost like a possession, right? And culturally, societally, we live in a very demonic world where what is praised by mainstream media, by mainstream entertainment, is becoming more and more satanic. I mean, it's obvious when you start looking around. I mean, have you seen Miley Cyrus and her performances recently? Don't tell me that is just human expression. Because there's something in the guts of people, a lot of people, not just me, not just Christian people, I mean, just people who see that and they go, well, something's not right. Something is wrong about that. And we share this strange moral compass as a human being, for the most part, okay? For the most part, if you go to any part of the world and say, is it okay to torture human babies against their will for pleasure? Well, most people say, no, that's not right. No, that's wrong. And the argument is often, if you are an atheistic thinker or if you're agnostic or whatever, they'll say, well, what if it's just part of the culture? What if it's cultural? Are you going to respect that? Just because it's a cultural thing, does it make it right? And it comes back to this objective moral compass. And it would make sense that if there are spiritual beings, angelic, demonic beings influencing the thoughts of men, then it would make sense that these beings would manipulate and deceive mankind to do certain things. Now, I think there's something to blood as well. Blood sacrifice is something that these elite Satan worshipers do, and it's disgusting. It's disturbing. Human sacrifice is part of various cultures. The Mayan culture had a lot of human sacrifice. But just because it's cultural, does it make it right? And I would argue no. And I would argue that those who move away from that natural inclination, that natural moral compass, are being led astray by ideas, by thoughts that are placed into the minds of men which aren't necessarily human. And here's another example from the book of Genesis here to give you an idea. Getting back to the garden here, God told Adam and Eve to tend the garden, to take care of it, subdue the earth, right? Let me get back to that point. The earth itself, as a whole, was not perfect. It was not Eden. It was not paradise. God gave Adam and Eve a job to do: be fruitful, multiply, subdue the earth, which means that while God said that the earth was very good when he created it, he definitely didn't say that it was perfect. But the Garden of Eden was this perfect paradise place, right? And so the goal, the job, the duty of Adam and Eve was to create paradise on earth, create an entire planet, which is Eden. Now think about that for a second, okay? Human beings made in the image of God, something we all share. What's another thing we all share inherently? World peace. And attached to that is this sort of environmental awareness, that sort of thinking. Now, I believe it's been completely hijacked, the whole green movement and everything else, in order to establish this corporatocracy, this continued eating up of human society, and to create this global order that is under the influence, under the control of these demonic forces. But in essence, that thought to me is very compelling, that humanity sees each other inherently as brothers and sisters, but that there are certain lies that have been instigated into the minds of men that makes us believe that we are, different factions, that you stay over there, I stay over here. If you get into my territory, I kill you, I'm going to go conquer your territory because I'm better than you. That sort of thinking is a deception And also that this idea of the earth being a place of paradise, a utopia, we all seek that. Everybody in their minds, I mean, this is a crude example, but let's take the example of the Miss America pageant or the Miss Universe pageant or whatever, right? They always ask the question, what would you want to see happen to the world? And they always say, world peace, right? And it appeals to something inherent in us, and that's why that answer is given. And so the desire for this paradise on earth, the desire for a connection with nature, we're surrounded by technology and all this stuff now, and it's a great tool, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm sitting in front of my computer right now, but is that how we were created to operate in this universe, in this world, on this earth? If you think about that movie, what was it? Office Space, right? One of the things the main character says at the beginning is what? I don't think we were meant to sit in offices all day long. You know why that resonated with people? Because it's true. It's true. We weren't meant to just sit in front of a computer in our office serving some guy, that's going to take all your money. You're just basically a slave. But you got to remember that boss, he's also a slave to some corporate head. And if you keep going up the ladder, eventually you might find the bankers, you might find the globalists, the Zionists, whatever, these groups, the shadow government, the 13 bloodline Illuminati families. We have all kinds of labels for them. But that's really missing the point. You're not going far enough up. Because at the very top is what the Bible calls the ruler of this world, Satan, a spiritual being, a demonic force. Now, this to me reflects reality as I observe it really well. And, I didn't bring up this word yet, the 3-letter word, sin, right? We have a heart problem. We have a problem within our human souls that causes us to turn on each other, to hate each other, to cause wars and kill each other and do things for gain, when really there is something beyond that. And when Adam and Eve ate of the forbidden fruit and accepted the lie that the serpent, which is actually Hanakash, a shining one, another one of these spiritual entities, when he deceived mankind, something happened. And we as human beings in the natural realm have inherited that decay. It goes down to death even. Think about death. There's something wrong with death. We just know it. But we can't do anything about it. At least in our own power. But that's changing too. What are the transhumanists, the technologists, the technocracy, what are they saying? They're saying we're going to defeat death in 30 years. We're going to become gods. Now, this is why a lot of, Christians who are looking at Bible prophecy, someone like myself, we see the times we're living in as very, very unique. Because while throughout history, the illumined ones used sacred knowledge, the use of alchemy, the use of hermeticism, all these rituals and different things to try to find immortality, to try to find that path to apotheosis, to become gods. A lot of it was in vain. I think a lot of it was a waste of time. Because how many of those people do you think actually achieved that apotheosis that they were seeking? It's the same thing with the Buddhist culture and religion, okay? Now, look, I'm not bashing the people when I talk about other religions, other faiths, okay? Because, again, I'm not against them as people, as human beings. I see them as image bearers of God, just as I'm created, just as you are created. But I am addressing the idea, the thought behind the faith or the belief. For example, Buddhism. And in Buddhism, what they believe is, to achieve enlightenment, right? Now, how many people have actually achieved enlightenment? Is there proof? Is there, hard evidence for that? It's very hard to say. Well, they say Buddha achieved enlightenment. What happened at that point? I'm not sure. And look, I'm not an expert in Buddhism, so if I'm missing something here, please let me know. But again, it was seeking that philosopher's stone. It was seeking the elixir of life. There's something that they knew throughout history. All these guys who passed down the sacred knowledge, they were all seeking what? Immortality. Always. It's always immortality, I'm a big anime fan, okay? And, I watched Dragon Ball before it became a thing in America. Now, my roots, my parents moved to America from Japan in 1976, and I was born in the early 80s, and so I got a lot of anime stuff from my aunts and uncles, and so I was consumed with anime before it became a huge thing in America, and one of the things that I loved watching was Dragon Ball, actually reading, because I have the original Japanese comic books of Dragon Ball. And, the story of Dragon Ball is you collect these 7 Dragon Balls, you put them together, and this dragon is summoned, and he grants a wish. And what are the bad guys always trying to do? Immortality. They're trying to find all the Dragon Balls so they can achieve immortality. Why? Because it's something that is inherent in our image of God. As bearers of God's image, we were created not to die. So I hope you're seeing what I'm getting at. There are themes that stem from the Bible that explain why we have certain desires, why we have angst against each other, why we have this desire to conquer death, why we have this desire to create a utopia on earth, this connection with nature so that we can exist in a symbiotic relationship with the world around us in perfect harmony, in perfect love. And the thing that is most important, I think, for the truther community to understand, or maybe to investigate, to come to some sort of conclusion, is what is the solution? Because realistically, what we are exposing in the truther community are all these lies, right? The government lies, Monsanto and their lies, the bankers and all their lies and manipulations. It's all part of this grand deception. But again, we can't focus on the people behind it because those very people are deceived into carrying out the agenda of these demonic angelic forces. See, this changes the trajectory. This changes the understanding of what's really going on. And my film was called Age of Deceit because we live in this age of deception where people like Henry Kissinger, now look, you know, on a surface level, you look at some of the stuff he's written, some of the stuff he said, it's like, dude, that guy is evil. That guy is Satan on earth, right? But really, is he? Or is he just another guy? I mean, realistically, these bankers, you know, that we always pin and we talk about all the 13 bloodlines of the Illuminati, they're just people, you know? Now, some would argue, no, they're not. They actually have the bloodline of the reptilians and stuff. Well, okay, you know, we can go there. We can investigate those things. And it's possible, you know, they're so inhuman in their approach and their control and desire for power over humanity. They can't be human. They can't possibly be image bearers of God. Well, that's possible, I suppose. But even then, are they not victims of something much bigger, something much more powerful behind the scenes working here? You know, so I think we have to reinvestigate or recalibrate what the truth movement is really about. Because while exposing those lies is a really good thing, a lot of people have been waking up. We need to figure out what the solution is. And an uprising is not a solution. I'm sorry, but it's not. Violence is not a solution. You know, yeah, sure, defend yourself, but, you know, what are we going to do? Create the truther army? You know, it's just perpetuating war. It's just falling into that same cycle of conquering and, you know, defending and war and killing. And that's just, it's the same thing. You know, I have a friend whose mother just recently started waking up to, you know, all the stuff going on. And we were joking around because I guess every single day he sends text messages and emails and phone calls. Oh my gosh, did you hear about NORAD? They're going underneath. We're going to get hit with an EMP. Let's go build our bunker. Let's cover our house in this, special tin foil. And, it's just, people freak out. And I don't think the truther community at large has done a very good job of helping people through that. And what I've seen happen, and this is, again, a sociological analysis, okay? This isn't just pinpointing any person or any group. I'm just looking at it as a whole. What I have seen is that the people that aren't grounded in their approach to some of these things, they start learning about all this stuff and they freak out. And they just want to shout it over the rooftops, and they want to tell all their friends, and people lose friendship and fellowship, and they get kicked out of schools and churches and all this stuff because they're going in there saying the Illuminati's behind everything, and it's wild. And I don't think the truther community at large has done a very good job of helping people process the information and let them know, hey, it's okay. This information is sort of, shattering to your everything that you've known, but it's going to be okay. Because why? Why is it going to be okay? Can you answer that question? Now, if you can, you might be jiving with me about what I'm talking about is the solution. But if you can't, you're going to have to do some soul searching. You're going to have to look around and say, what is really the point here of exposing all these people? What are we trying to get at? What's the objective? What's the goal? And so what I've seen is that people who don't have a grounded approach to these things, they just go down the rabbit trail and they keep going down. And they just keep going down further and further and further and further. Expose this, expose that, to the point where they're just sitting in murky water and they're going, hey, I'm exposing this, but they're just sloshing around in the water. They're not really helping anybody. It's not really exposing anything more than what needs to be exposed. Okay, so they're just kind of spinning their wheels, and they're perpetuating these things that cause fear and anxiety in people, right? And of course, there's extremes in various directions here. But what I've noticed is that there is a faction of truthers that, all they can do is seek truth, and they sort of use that as the altar by which all, topics, whether it be the most craziest things like, the reptilian idea to the flat earth, to anything that's in the conspiracy world, they sacrifice it on the altar of seeking truth. But then again, what are you sacrificing that to? Who are you helping in that process? What is the ultimate objective here? Now, I'm guilty of talking about some of the craziest things, and let me tell you, you will hear on this channel, you will hear on any conspiracy channel, right? You'll hear just all kinds of stuff, and it gives you that emotional sort of, oh, yes, that I resonate with that because that lie is so powerful and it's deceiving people, and we need to really get on people's cases to help them wake up and see the truth. And there's value in that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's no value in exposing lies and doing that whole thing. But, I just don't think that creating a opposition in terms of a uprising is necessarily the right thing to do, okay? I mean, think about this. Now listen, I have my own opinion about Alex Jones. He is probably the biggest name in terms of, alternative research, alternative media, whatever. Some people say, oh, he's tied in with the global elite and he's just he's the other arm. He's controlled. Some say that he's Bill Hicks and the real Alex Jones was killed years ago. Who knows, man? I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like, what good does that do? But at the same time, you listen to Alex Jones, man, you listen to him for like 10 minutes. It's like the world is falling apart, man. It's like, I can't do an Alex Jones impression here, but you know what I'm talking about. He gets all flustered, like, he's yelling and screaming and all the globalist scum, And it's like, look, he's right, but what's the solution, man? Like, what's really the point? Is it to buy your health things? Or is there something else? And I would argue that there's a spiritual element to this. And that's really the solution. It's in the spirit realm. We can't solve anything from the physical world. And even the physicists are starting to say, hey, there's something up with the construct of reality. I think we're living in a digital simulation. And what's interesting is that that's biblical as well. Believe it or not, that's biblical. And I actually think that as we go along here, as we start to live back in a supernatural world, but not just a supernatural world in the view that, throughout history, what they had, but supernatural with the scientific evidence to support this idea that we live in a whatever you want to call it, multiverse, whatever. We're going to have to start redefining certain terms and certain ways of thinking, our philosophy, our presuppositions, all of that stuff, because words like physical, what's that mean? Words like spiritual, what's that mean? Is there a difference? Is there a divide? Yeah, there's some sort of divide there, but all that kind of stuff is breaking down in the traditional sense. And so linguistically, we're even sort of having to redefine certain things. And when you start looking into things like the alien abduction phenomenon, sleep paralysis, UFO sightings, all that kind of stuff, you begin to find that there's an element of maybe this group that's behind the curtain, so to speak. Those who might have direct access to these demonic angelic beings, the ones that they're communicating with to get all this information, maybe they are breaking down the veil or breaching it in order to carry out their agenda. And that's where I'm seeing things. CERN, the topic of transhumanism, the creation of virtual realities, the creation of artificial intelligence in a sense of, sentient machines, the singularity. These are all movements and ideas that I think are manifesting in order to recreate a culture that was present in ancient times. Probably pre-flood, but also post-flood, when we're talking about the Tower of Babel. Now, there's something that a lot of people miss in the Tower of Babel story. If you go to Genesis 11, it's the story of the Tower of Babel. And here's what God says. He says, behold, they are one people. They have all one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Think about that for a second. Nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. What's that sound like? It sounds like they're playing God, right? And if you look at the Bible systematically, what does this Satan, this adversary, what does he want to do? Well, if you go to Isaiah 14, you see that he has the 5 I wills. He wants to ascend above the throne of God. He wants to be God himself. And the characteristics of the New World Order, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call it, they want to play God. And they believe the lie. Remember in the Garden of Eden? Ye shall be as gods. When really, humanity already had attributes of God, not so much in that we were God, but we definitely had the very things that would make us the true image bearers of God. Probably immortal life, eternal life, probably extra perception into the spiritual world. Because I think at that fall, that realm of the spirit and the realm of the physical was split, or a veil was placed between the two, so that we can no longer see and access the spirit world. But what do we do now? We take drugs to see it. We, take psychedelics to reach into that realm. And oftentimes what people find is not pleasant. I was watching a CNN report where this lady basically documents all these different stories. And one of the stories was following these group of people who had trauma and various things in life, go down to South America and go on ayahuasca trips. And one of the guys that's, done ayahuasca several times, under the influence, he started, dancing and doing all these weird things. And afterwards they asked him what was going on. And he said, the serpents were in me. They were here. They came and they took over my body. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, wait a minute, hold on. You're telling me these serpent gods took over your body and you're cool with it? Like you get power from that somehow? You get healing from that? Is it genuine? Is it real? Is it long lasting? Is it something that's going to sustain you, or do you have to come back and take more ayahuasca? And look, I've done drugs, okay? Let me tell you, I've done drugs. Again, I was not a Christian or not, I'm not this perfect guy. All right. I've done drugs. I've seen the weird stuff. I've hallucinated on chemicals. All right. So don't tell me I just don't know what I'm talking about, because I do. but I'm skeptical of the claim that there is long-lasting healing from something like ayahuasca. But again, that's a whole nother topic. Rick Strassman, DMT, the spirit molecule. We can get into all that. Maybe I'll get into it in another week here. But what I really wanted to do with this episode was just kind of lay the groundworks for the things that I talk about on a daily basis on my YouTube channel, things we talk about on Canary Cry Radio, the podcast. And, I just give a report because, look, man, let me tell you something. Go to my YouTube channel, check out some of my videos, read the comment section. It is a cesspool. No, that's not fair. Okay, not everybody is negative on the comment section, but there are certain people, man, that just, they define troll, okay? Now, some of them, I'm convinced that there are some people that are paid trolls that definitely troll my channel. And I'm not saying that to be like, oh, I'm just, so cool and telling the truth that there are people after me. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying literally there's people that I wonder, like, how the heck are you on my channel every single day, spending all day, every day on it? And, all you're doing is bashing anything I say on the video. Every once in a while, they'll throw a bone at me. Oh, I kind of liked what you said here, but this, you're just completely, you're just, like what compels you to do that? Unless you're getting paid. Nobody has that much time on their hands, right? So anyway, I wanted to lay the groundwork. And if you listen to this from the beginning, I really hope that it brings you a sort of a renewed sense of calibration where, you kind of get to refresh on all this stuff, because so many of us are so deep in the rabbit hole that we don't know what the heck we're doing. We're kind of just running in circles. We're splashing around, we're kind of like, and we don't know why we're doing the exposing that we're doing. We don't know what the actual solution is. And some of you guys might be like, well, there is a solution, duh. But I want you to come up with it. I want you to analyze yourself in the process and take into consideration some of the things I said, okay? You don't have to believe the Bible. You don't have to believe me. But take into consideration this worldview, the worldview that I come from, this biblical worldview, because to me, it makes a heck of a lot of sense. And that doesn't mean that I'm right. It doesn't mean that, you're wrong if you believe otherwise. We don't know for sure. None of us do. But we can discuss these things. And keeping an open mind is very important for all of this. I mean, you have to be able to process information that you're uncomfortable with in order to find out if there's any grain of truth in there or not. I mean, that's how I started my whole investigation of Christianity. I did it because I thought, well, I'm an open-minded person. I'll check out this church. And I said, I'm going to read the Bible. I'll check it out just because I'm open-minded. I don't want to believe any of this stuff. It's all crazy talk, right? But is there any truth to it? And the more I dug, the more I started to realize, hey, wait a minute. That accusation, not true. That rhetoric about Christianity, about religion, it's just rhetoric. And furthermore, the very people making those claims are making that rhetorical sort of sledgehammer against religion or spirituality or Christianity. They were using the exact same tactics that they were pointing out as faulty or problematic. So look, all of us are on this journey here, this thing called life, and we're all trying to figure out what's true. And the journey is never ending, Maybe upon our physical death, something will happen. We will find the truth, but in some regard, it might be too late. Those things are beliefs. Those are systematic doctrine that we've, come to accept or not accept this side of death, physical death anyway. But don't deny the evidence that's out there for an afterlife or for the spiritual realm. There's plenty of it. And perhaps it's unable to verify it scientifically because we don't have the right science to do it. At the same time, this gets into some of the topics that I'm personally interested in, which is something like a secret space program, technologies that exist already that bridge that gap and tap into certain energy sources that are quote unquote natural, more natural than plugging into a wall, because, If they can't charge us for the electricity, what's the point, right? So I firmly believe that there are technologies and there are constructs of our physical reality that we have been completely blocked of. And especially as technology progressed in the 20th century, I believe there was a huge split where a certain group, call them the elite, call them a breakaway civilization, as Richard Dolan calls it, they continued on one trajectory, developing technologies based on this alternative science that is apart from the mainstream. And what the mainstream science did was stick to materialism, stick to everything in the physical, and limit themselves in that box and continue to go down that road. And so established institutions continue to perpetuate this idea of materialism, even though it's dying. Materialism is dying in the universities because it doesn't work. But more and more people are becoming awake of the supernatural world, the paranormal, the spiritual, whatever you want to call it. But not everyone agrees with what the ultimate reality is. You know, the Christian believes there's one God. But guess what? The Bible also teaches that there are other gods, lowercase g. Most Christians have no idea about that. And this isn't something that's polytheistic. It's actually very biblical. It's still monotheism, but it's a little bit more than that. And it makes sense when you start digging into it. I'm talking about the divine council. And if you don't know that term, look it up. Look up Dr. Michael Heiser. He will blow your mind. But anyway, I'm running out of time here. I hope you guys enjoyed my ramble. And if you didn't, that's okay too. You know, I hope you guys get something out of it. Next time I host, I will go ahead and dig into something more specific. You know, this was again kind of a general overview of things. But I do like looking at various conspiracies and, you know, getting my hands dirty with all of the things going on with the hidden forces. And hey, guess what? That's even biblical too. Ephesians 5:11 have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. So all of you people doing exposing, you're doing something biblical. You can't deny it. Even in the book of Ezekiel chapter 8, God tells Ezekiel to go to this certain place. And what does he find? He finds all the leaders of Israel worshiping other gods, doing pagan rituals. These are the leaders of Israel, the people that God chose, right? So anyway, I can go off on tangents all day long. I'm going to leave you with a little track that I made. I also make music as kind of a side thing. It's just a fun thing that I do. And so hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you for listening to this crazy conspiracy theorist Christian guy ramble on for the last hour. If you guys have any questions, email me, facelikethesun@gmail.com. You can go to youtube.com/facelikethesun, or you can go to canarycryradio.com to check out all the podcasts. I hope you guys have an awesome evening. God bless.